Today I'm exploring Grenada. Grenada is a very small island in the middle of the Caribbean, well, more towards the south of the Caribbean. It's part of this very long island chain here. You can see all these various countries coming from the north down to the south through kind of a curve. Grenada's got three different islands. We have got the main one here, and then there's two smaller ones up here, which I'm not going to try and pronounce. Uh, but this one's Petite Martinique. I don't know, I should have listened to the pronunciations. Those are two interesting islands to the north of it. But the main island down here, Grenada, is the one we're going to focus on because it has some interesting historical points on it. We're going to jump through a couple of different things. First, though, I want to mention the hurricane that came through here, Hurricane Beryl, which has caused a lot of damage. Look at some of the news articles. UK government provides £500,000 in aid through Grenada and the other islands in the region. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the island group just to the north of Grenada. Hurricane Beryl causes unimaginable damage in Grenada. Leader says, lots of footage of the destruction. Just very sad because they actually had a very bad hurricane called Hurricane Ivan in 2004, I believe, which did a lot of damage too and kind of disrupted the actual, I suppose, economic progress that was kind of occurring in that region. And coupled with like massive debt that has to be built up to rebuild the island and things like that, and an agricultural sector that isn't really booming anyway, it's really quite a sad story. Grenada is actually the second largest producer of nutmeg in the world, second after Indonesia. Also has cocoa beans, things like that. So it actually does have some valuable products. And tourism is now becoming a bigger and bigger deal. If we zoom in here to the main city of St. George, let's turn off the labels actually just to make this a bit prettier. We actually see a big cruise liner in the dock here. Cruise ships would be a very big source of income for the country. Tourism is important. A little bit here to the north, again, we see a cricket stadium, various sport areas. The actual houses themselves don't look like they're so robust to hurricane damage. If we look into some of these images here, you just see the horrendous damage that has occurred. I don't know what would be robust to hurricane damage. I guess a hurricane can do whatever it wants, unfortunately, to houses and to the way people live. It really is quite a tragic thing. This is Hurricane Ivan, though. This is different damage, but hopefully it wasn't as bad as that time. Here are some boats that got destroyed in Hurricane Ivan as well. Just very sad images in general, and I just wanted to bring them up as we go through. This is about Hurricane Beryl. Map plotting the storm's tracking and intensity according to specific scale. So I guess the darker the color is, the more horrendous the actual hurricane was. We see it starting here in the Atlantic, moving all the way to the east, going right over Grenada, right there, and moving deeper into the Gulf, and then calming down once it goes towards Canada there. So that's quite sad, I have to say. Let's go to some of the facts, which are actually quite interesting. Maybe if we close that tab, that might be better. Go to the top. I often listen to the pronunciations of these places because I've never heard of them before. So Grenada, I would call it Grenada personally, but Grenada seems to be much better. Consists of the main island itself and the two smaller islands, which again I haven't been able to pronounce. Carico, I don't know, sorry about that. It is known as the island of spice due to its production of nutmeg and mace crops. Mace is just a part of the nutmeg, is the way I understand it. Mace from its seed and mace from the seed covering. We look at the pictures for nutmeg, it's the exact same picture as for mace. An interesting thing I never heard of before, mace. First time I heard of mace. Before the arrival of Europeans in the Americas, Grenada was inhabited by indigenous people from South America. Christopher Columbus sighted Grenada on his third voyage in 1498. Following several unsuccessful attempts by Europeans to colonize the islands due to resistance from the locals, big surprise, French settlement and colonization did begin in 1649. So it took a while, from basically 1500, so 150 odd years before it actually became colonized. In 1763, Grenada was ceded to the British under the Treaty of Paris, which is this big treaty with loads of countries involved. Known as the Treaty of 1763, signed by Great Britain, France, Spain, Portugal in agreement following Britain and Prussia's victory over France and Spain during the 7 Years' War. In 1967, it was granted full. Oh, wait, sorry, they want to skip this part. It was British rule continued there until 1974, except for a brief French takeover in 1779 and 1783. I kind of looked into that. That was a little bit of an interesting story there, but a bit too long for today's video. So then it was granted full autonomy in 1967. There was a period where Grenada was part of the Federation of West Indies, which I thought was actually quite interesting. I wanted to show that to you a small bit here. The West Indies Federation, also known as other versions of it, the West Indian Federation, was a short-lived political union. So think of the European Union, for example, that existed from 1958 to 1962, so only 4 years. Various islands in the Caribbean that were part of the British Empire, including Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Jamaica, and various other islands, came together to form the Federation with its capital in Trinidad and Tobago. The express intention of the Federation was to create a political unit that would become independent from Britain as a single state, similar to Canada's, to Australia, the Federation of Rhodesia, places like that. Before that could happen, the Federation collapsed due to internal political conflicts and how it would be governed or function viably. This is kind of the argument people make against the BRICS story as well, that like BRICS can't really succeed as one unit because there's just too many different playmakers and like stakeholders that they're not really aligned with each other. This kind of reminds me of BRICS in that sense. Like, trying to get India and China to agree on the same policy for something, and they're the two biggest economies. Yeah, good luck in that making that actually work. But I don't know, BRICS isn't about having a union, but it's about having broader collaboration. This just reminds me of that, having all these different countries that are not really aligned perfectly. And that's why Europe is such a big deal too. How did Europe work? Because so many different cultures in Europe, and it seems to work at the moment. The formation of a West Indian Federation was encouraged by the United Kingdom, but also requested by pan-Caribbean nationalists. Yeah, so I thought that was something worth bringing up. I never knew about this West Indies Federation concept before. Let's go back here. Independence was granted in 1974, which seems to be slightly. Yeah, no, it's the same one. Yeah, under the leadership of Eric Gairy, who became the first Prime Minister of Grenada as a sovereign state, became a member of the Commonwealth, etc., etc. This is interesting. In 1979, so only a few years later, 5 years later, the Marxist-Leninist New Dual movement overthrew Gairy's government in a bloodless coup and established the People's Revolutionary Government. Bishop was later arrested. So Bishop was the Prime Minister in this new communist setup, socialist setup. He was arrested and executed by members of the People's Revolutionary Army. It was used to justify a US-led invasion in 1983. Since then, the island has returned to parliamentary representative democracy and has remained politically stable. That's a little bit of interesting history there. Thought it was worth mentioning it. A little bit dramatic. Other than that, I'm going to go on to the economy section, I think, in a minute. I want to show you a couple of things. I couldn't find that many crazy things to show you other than this volcano lake. I thought was kind of cool. A lake in the middle of a volcano in the middle of the island, basically quite centrist. I've got some pictures here from Google Maps. Let's go through some of these just to see if we can have one of the cooler views. I guess this is some of the crop here. Well, okay, it's just some random leaves. I did try really hard to find nutmeg plantations, but I guess it's just part of the forest, so I guess there isn't really much to actually show you, unfortunately. Normally I like to show you those sort of things. Let's go into the economy for a minute. So the economy of Grenada is a largely tourism-based, small open economy. Over the past 2 decades, the main direction of Grenada's economy has shifted towards services from agriculture, with tourism serving as the leading foreign currency earning sector. Here he has a bit about the second largest nutmeg producer. They also produce bananas, cloves, cinnamon, lots of these nice spices, again earning that name, the Spice Island. A little bit on the actual economic journey here. So economic growth picked up in the late 1990s following slow growth in domestic fiscal adjustment in the early years of the decade. Despite an expansionary fiscal policy, the public debt remained moderate at around 50%. Keep that public debt number in mind. We'll bring up the graph here. We can get rid of Trinidad for a moment and just look at Grenada in isolation. So we're looking here, starting at 34 and jumping right up to 100. Now, you got to remember what actually happened in these years. It was the hurricane. So we're going to see that in a minute, how that actually affected. So at the same time, they were kind of taking on more debt. The hurricane happened and just kind of made things really, really bad in terms of debt. Let's continue the story here. So we start around 50%. Since 2001, I should mention this too. 50%, which were 50% of GDP, as deficits were financed partly by privatization receipts, so selling off parts of the infrastructure. So you can only do that once, of course. You can sell off your telegraph company or your telephone company or your sewage treatment company, whatever it is, and then be basically charging for those services. You can get a lump of money for that in year one, but you're never getting that money back again. So you can only have that once, I guess, is what we're actually talking about here. The decline was caused by adverse shocks, such as the slowdown in the global economy and natural disasters from 2001 onwards. To deal with the shocks, fiscal policy became more expansionary. So we can think of quantitative easing in America and in Europe as a kind of a similar concept. While privatization receipts declined, as a result, public debt increased sharply to near 110% of GDP in 2003. Economic conditions worsened when Hurricane Ivan hit the country in 2004. Yeah, progress in fiscal consolidation was impeded as government revenues fell and policy priorities were shifted to post-hurricane relief. Construction had proceeded quickly, with basically external aid coming in and helping, as well as tourism. But tourism and agricultural activities remained weak, I should say, and only offset the stimulus from the reconstruction boom. Country is still facing the difficult situation of reconstruction and recovery, while public debt is unsustainable and government faces large financing gaps in the years ahead. So not a pretty picture. We can kind of see it has come down, that debt down to 58, which isn't really such a bad number. If we look at the all the islands are kind of in the same place. That's 107 for Barbados. Is that, yeah? Here we have 75. So 98. So actually, relatively, Grenada looks pretty okay actually when we see it that way. But still, it's not great. Probably now with the new hurricane having come in and again wreaking havoc. Basically, it's not great at all. We look at the political freeness. Look at that, 89. That's pretty strong. And its neighbour there, 90 is also pretty good. If we go to Trinidad, 82. Yeah, so Grenada really doing well on the old political freedom and rights and civil liberties. That's always a good thing to see. I didn't look at any of the other ones here. I probably didn't have anything on electricity. No, there was no data. But there was a little bit of data on subsea cables. So fibre cable coming through here, South Caribbean fibre, Eastern Caribbean fibre system, and we have a local one here too called Caribbean Regional Communications Infrastructure Program. Yeah, so I thought that was worth mentioning. Climate change data. So here we've one of the more, I suppose, liable to flooding points, but because it's kind of like a volcanic island, I guess, there's a lot of elevation, and therefore not a lot of fear on the water side. Here's quite a built-up area. We see here from the population map, the density, you can kind of see it there. It won't zoom in more, unfortunately, but you can see a lot of people are living there, but no, there's no big fear there. And then again, a big part of the population lives on this kind of ridge, again, relatively safe from any climate change issues. We can bring this forward to the more dramatic setting on the metric, and again, not really a big difference. You see all the coast is kind of getting a little bit reduced, but it's not going to really be a big problem for the locals, you can imagine. All of the beachfront property will get a bit damp though, that's for sure. But yeah, other than that, people should be relatively safe living on the island into the future. Let's see, I don't think I have much more to show you folks today. It's quite a small island. Again, this is me desperately trying to find something like nutmeg plantations. There's just a random field. I can't, there's no real proof that that's anything in particular. Here it looked a bit like palm trees or something, but no, I couldn't really find anything conclusive on the agricultural front. This is one of the islands to the north, just very beautiful. This one's here is called Sandy Island, for obvious reasons. I thought that looked kind of pretty. There were some nice features here. This was a nice little lagoon area. Yeah, just some nice little colours as well in general, but overall nothing really too dramatic. It's just a nice little quiet part of the world, little island where people go for holidays, and where nutmeg comes from, and where hopefully the hurricane hasn't done too much damage for the locals as well. I really hope that they can recover quite quickly, because people should be able to live in peace and calmness, and hopefully that will not happen so often going forward for the island of Grenada.